I didn't do anything different, hon.
Now we got blinking lights.
What the fuck?
This is not okay. I feel like someone's talking with us.
Spirits are talking to us now.
What's the date today? No, is that everything will...
Then, yeah, it'll trip.
Oh. Oh, my goodness.
Is it not enough light if you turn that one off?
Anything else?
Somebody doesn't want me to do this podcast.
What? I got too much to say?
I feel like we should have been recording this on Halloween.
What do you do?
All right. This podcast is brought to you by WeHaulBoats.com. Did you buy a boat? Figured maybe you'd find a trailer elsewhere? Right now you might be kicking yourself trying to get your stabbing cabin moved from Florida to Jersey, or vice versa. Who knows? Maybe you got a canoe, a raft. Maybe you have a boat on a trailer, but your truck's out of commission, or it's over at the Gentleman's Club having a Bloody Mary. Call Mike at We Haul Boats. You know what he does. He hauls boats all day, every day, sometimes at night. Depends on your schedule, which Mike at WeHaulBoats.com works around. Sleep soundly and comforted, knowing your boat's in the hands of the best hauler in the game. Don't be silly. Go to WeHaulBoats.com. That's WeHaulBoats.com to get your quote today. One. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Offshore Live number 11 with the Tim Sharkey. Thanks for coming in, brother.
Hey, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Sorry about the technical difficulties getting fired up here, but I think we got it straightened out. And ready to rock and roll, man.
Yeah,
what's going on?
awesome.
The reason why I called you, it's sitting right on the desk here, and I just want to start with this. I want you to tell me all about bullet boats.
Well, back in the early 80s, went to work for Tom DeAngelis, who's the designer and builder of the boat. Was in partnership with my cousin. And I pretty much put that boat on the map, running it out in the ocean. That particular boat saw just about every inch of the coast of New Jersey. I ran some trips from Cape May to Manasquan. I ran in '86. I ran it from Manasquan up to New York Harbor for 4th of July fireworks. And then later on, I got involved with the poker runs with it.
Right.
With another boat.
So I've been seeing on Facebook, you've been putting up these like course maps of some of your runs back in the day.
Yep.
And they exceed 100 miles, 120 miles sometimes. It's it's pretty hard to fathom in a 13-foot boat.
Well, back then I was only 22 years old, so
that's it, man. Recover well, bounce well.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to kind of kick this show off with that because that is what got you started in this crazy sport of ours. And I just think they're too cool. I mean, how many different models are there?
Well, the bullet boats started in '82. Tommy had built that, and then he also went into building a 22-foot offshore closed deck version, the reverse chine, and that's when I got involved. We were prepping up the plug for that and making the mold off of that. When my cousin got involved with it and we were ready to go full gear in building them, at that time, we kind of steered more towards the center consoles. We built a few 22-foot center consoles, and then everything else after that was in the 20s. Did full liners, did some boats that were roll gunnels, you know, kind of different formats, you know, kind of fit everyone's price range. And it worked out pretty well. And in fact, just this week I came across an old 22 center console, which I totally forgot about, which probably was built after I had already left the company. I believe it was an '87 boat. And guy here down in Green Island just picked it up. Boat is immaculate. I mean, I think he's the second owner.
Uh-oh. Is that one not plugged in, hon?
No, it is.
It's always something, Tim.
Yeah.
Every show we do. We can keep going because that's just the room shot. So the 13's what really gave it its mainstay.
Well, I mean, all the boats in general, but the 13s were really where they all started from, and once I got my hands on that one, it was every weekend, just going past Jenkinson's and people, seeing this boat, I think really put it on the map. And then once Bullet had, end up closing its doors, we had the stock market crash and all. They closed the doors, I believe, in '87 because I incorporated Sharkey Boats Inc. in 1988 and built a handful of them. Then I started racing them. With that, I'm going to say that's when I got involved with the poker run stuff. I got to thank Billy Friends for allowing me to show up in his 2001 and 2002 poker run on the New York Hudson River run. And I was proud in 2002, he awarded me this trophy, Spirit of the MPBA Award. That was my second year that I ran with them. And after that event, I decided I'm not going to push my luck and try it for a third year in a row.
Right.
There was some too many close calls.
Right.
There's some big water up there on the Hudson, especially around the city. This particular boat, that trophy on the other side, is from Key West, 1987. They had the offshore races down there, and it was just more of a fun thing. But they awarded me this overall first place winner overall thing for that event, which was just, like I said, it was just a fun thing to go out and do.
Right.
I was down there racing. That's with the Apollo 2.
And now, just so everybody listening understands, that's all in your 13-footer.
Yes.
That's impressive, sir.
Yeah, that's all basically on my 13-footer. Getting into the offshore portion of it, I was working, doing glass work. After leaving Bullet Boats, I was now finding myself doing a lot of boat repairs on the race boats. And Ralph Papke, Doug Lewis, Pro Marine on Manilokan Road at that time. Always around their shop, and it was, never forget the day Apollo 2 during the Barnegat Bay race. Ralph had flipped the boat that race, but it landed right side up. They swam back, they finished the race. Well, I just happened to be with Ralph and the owner of the boat at the owner's house afterwards, and they were discussing about putting a navigator in the boat. And so I was there at the right place at the right time, and the owner asked me, "Hey, you want to go racing?" I'm like, "After what happened today, what are the chances of that happening again?" "Yeah, I'll go." So, then I started racing with them. And
which boat was that?
The Apollo 2.
Okay.
It was a triple outboard Shadow Cat. And I raced with them. We brought it to Key West. Probably that year, '87, we brought it to Key West, and we delaminated the bottom. And that's when the owner just said, "It's retiring the boat," and got out of racing. My next step from there was I showed up in Atlantic City. I always, running the little boat, I always had my Lifeline jacket, my helmet with me at all times. So it was always in the truck. Well, fortunately for me that day in Atlantic City was, little unbeknownst to me, somebody approached me and said, "Hey, you want to go racing?" I was like, "What's going on?" She says, "Well, Rich Tropley's navigator, Leanne, had, I believe it might have been pink eye or something. She couldn't race." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll fill in for her, I got everything in the truck." So, and then from there on.
And that was Shockwave? That
was Shockwave. It was the Magnum.
Right.
And, oh, man, was that a small boat for those waters.
Yeah, man.
It was really rough that year. We were probably only doing 30 miles an hour during that race. It was just really big water.
And that was a Magnum?
The first one was the Magnum.
No shit.
The one I was in, that was the old Magnum. And he had sold that and then picked up the Mirage.
I remember the Mirage.
Yeah. Beautiful paint job on that boat. And boat ran really well. It was great in the rough. So the following year, raced in Atlantic City again with that boat. And I guess I raced up probably around 94, 95 with them on that boat. It was right before he was getting the Hustler. And I was just gotten engaged, so it was kind of the end of my racing. And but I was in Key West 1 year, and he asked me to get in one more time, and we went out and raced the Hustler.
Right.
And that boat was a rocket. We were like first to the turn in Key West, but it was just after the first turn, things just got a little messy, and we just, end up slowing down. So,
Right.
Being very conservative. And that was it, as far as the offshore racing was concerned. But, I thank Ralph Papke and God bless Doug Lewis, those guys got me where I was with that, There was another story, though, with Doug, was I was asked to go down to help with Bill Gazelle's Great Adventure. He had a one-off cat being made, the Cheetah Cat. And it was a stock class boat with, I think, a pair of 200s on the back of it. And I went down to meet Steve Koss, who was the designer of it and builder. And they had 2 weeks to go to get this thing ready for Key West. I get there, and the boat's still it was a lofted boat, no mold, built it from framework. I got there, and Steve's like, "Got any idea how much this weighs?" I said, No idea. He says, "Go back to the transom and go pick it up." I literally picked the back of that 30-something foot boat up with no problem. Shit. And he went on to win the world championship with that
What year was that?
Whew, horrible with the years. I don't
90s?
know. I know I got the article where it was in, it had to be in the 90s.
Because when he came back, Bill came and ran with us for a little while in the early 2000s, and I believe it was with a twin-engine outboard cat.
Well, he also ran the Motions twin outboards,
right.
But this was you couldn't miss this boat.
Right.
It was a pointy, super lightweight. I tested with him out in the Matitacock here, and I was like, "Hey, let's go. You ready?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm ready." So he's going, and I'm driving this thing. We're running along. This is only with 2 motors. And all of a sudden, I'm like, "Hey, Bill, I got no steering. Hey, Bill." And he just looks over and gives me that grin, and he starts laughing at me. He's like, "Bill, the boat's just walking sideways."
Right.
I said, "I have no steering." And then finally he backs out of it. He said, "Now you know why I need 3 engines on this thing."
Right.
The boat literally was just flying along the water.
Right.
I was just shocked to hear. I just, for as light as that boat was, I never realized how well built it was until I found out that boat got over 100 races over in Dubai.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I've been in touch with Steve Koss over the years, and I said, "So how are those boats making out over there?" He says, "They were unbeatable. They changed the rules and outlawed it."
No shit. Wow.
Yeah.
Bill was always at the lead of the cutting edge kind of technology back then. And it must have been so cool for somebody just kind of getting around it, getting used to it, getting your feet wet, to be able to get in a boat with Bill Gazelle. You know, a lot of us today, our heroes have changed. It's been a long time, and a lot of people phase in, phase out. But that name is one that I think will get talked about synonymously with Offshore forever.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a hell of a competitor. I do recall, the one article I had, and I'm saying to myself, wow, I'm standing in the middle of, I think, Tom Mullis and Bill Gazelle. And it was out in Chicago. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Went out there with him with OPT to help him, just maintain the boat when we were out there. So it was just, fun to be a part of.
Oh, it had to have been. Well, and then you were with Rich, where Tropical's been through some of the coolest boats. I mean, from Rio Rose to Dragon Lady to Shockwave. I mean, he's another one, man. You got
to give hats off to him for being in the sport as long as he had. And I never raced that canopy boat, but that boat went on to, do all sorts of good things.
Well, it was just cool, for somebody like you just getting your feet wet and coming around to get your hooks in with so many cool people.
Yeah. The funny thing was, back then you needed navigation. So that was my job. My job was to be a navigator, watch the gauges, and Scott's was, throttles and watch the water, and Rich was the drive. And more than one occasion, I proved I was worth every penny to be out there, because there was a few races we did win on navigation. There was sometimes, I'll bring up this one story down in Maryland. And the race was a triangular course, which it was just phenomenal because so many people would get lost on triangle courses.
Right.
Well, this one even threw me for a curve because I had all my settings. We were working with compasses. I had all my settings, which I had to be careful of because I did pick up on Atlantic City. people were copying the numbers off my charts on the dashboard.
Right.
So now I started covering them up. And well, besides covering up, once I became aware, I would do is put the wrong numbers down on the course.
Well, I was just going to say that was an old Gazelle trick.
I put the wrong numbers on the chart, put them on the dashboard, and then took out the real one once we left the dock.
Right.
But there was one particular race that we were in Maryland, going against Heartbeat, going against Fever, and Peter Meyer and all these guys. It's just the best of the best.
Phenoms.
And, these guys, we're always watching their transoms, And I'm just like, man, it's just one race I would love to be ahead of them, at some point. And I just felt that was going to be the race. So we started off, and as soon as we started getting lined up for the green flag, I noticed the way the seas were running and the swells were pushing. And from where my numbers were, I told Rich, I said, Rich, do me a favor. I said, see those numbers? We're going to adjust that 10, 15 degrees. We're going to go further north. And as the green flag's dropping, everybody's going to the right, and Rich starts following them. I said, Rich, I said, to the left, to the left. He says, but everybody's going that way. I said, Rich, don't worry about it. Just listen to me. Trust me on this one. Well, what I was doing is taking into account for every time we hit a wave, it pushed us, and it pushed us south. Well, they already started running towards the south, and we're headed. And if nothing else, my eyesight, even to this day, distance, I could see. I could see a mile out with no problem. And I'm like, Rich, I already got the buoy in sight. He's like, are you kidding? He said, how do you see that? I said, I can see it already. I said, now look to your right and look how far away everybody is. And then they realized, they look over the shoulders and saw where we were. Then they started making their correction. We had such a lead on these boats. We made the turn. We come down the straightaway, and we just caught a bad one. All that time we saved, we hooked it
right out
so
the window.
hard. It was 90 degrees, and I'm like, hard right, hard left, because I'm sideways, and I'm looking at the boats ready to drive over us.
Right.
And we got straightened out. How we never got run over is beyond me, but we went from dead first to probably third or fourth at that point.
I think they call that hero to zero.
it was a tough one. That was a tough one. But
that's that's the cool factor of the past to me is, and you said it there, like running against guys like Peter and boats like Fever. I mean, just
Fever. He in my mind, he was unbeatable.
Yeah.
That boat went out, he either won or he broke.
Right.
And those guys were just unbelievable.
The names back then were synonymous with greatness. Like you don't have that today because the competition level is so tight. The race courses are so tight where there's not much time for talent to really overcome. There is in a lot of instances, a lot of spec class instances, even bracket class. But with the courses being so tight, you don't have the time you did back then. We're doing our best work over the course of 40 miles.
Yeah.
Whereas you guys, that was one lap.
Yeah, we were doing anywhere from 80 to 100. And so you always had time. You always can kind of feel who's running too hard, that, all right, we're not going to have to worry about them. They're not going to make it. Then again, on more than one vacation, we didn't make it either.
Right.
Because sometimes you just got to push it. And just to go for the win.
So, and I asked, I did a podcast and Johnny Stanch came in and I was asking him kind of some of the same questions, but one he couldn't really answer was, what was the game? Like, was it to go hard out of the gate? More of those gremlins. Was it to go hard out of the gate and set a pace, or was it to come out and pace everyone else?
At the start, you're going for the that first turn, and then after that, you kind of feel who's got what, and I learned that real quick as far as power is concerned, and prime example, I'll never forget being up with Arnold D'Ambrosia, who invited me up on his boat to watch the races up on the Hudson, and you had Don Johnson show up. And he set the course record, I believe, on the Hudson that year. But I'm sitting there with Howard, the cab. He was a DJ for New York. I think Howard, the cab driver, or something like that. And we were all sitting around, and Howard wanted to do an interview with Don Johnson, and something happened there, so he wasn't a huge fan. And I said, no problem, Howard. I said, he's not going to finish. He's like, how can you be so sure? I said, trust me, he's not going to finish. And sure enough, I think it was a lap or two after I said that, he's limping by on a couple of motors because they were running filled with fuel. You know, that fast out of the gate, that heavy, your motors ain't going to take that.
Right.
But if he was only out to set the course record, well, he accomplished that. God bless him.
Right.
You know,
and
congratulations.
that's something that's pretty cool, too. We don't have that too much anymore.
Yeah.
But the course records, that was huge back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, nowadays, I think our lap times are in the 1 to 2 minute range, whereas back then you had a lot of room to go really set a record.
You got straightaways that you can run.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's what made it challenging too. And the real challenging course for probably of all places was Buffalo, New York. Okay. There's a race that you had to really choose your setup because you ran behind a break wall, and that was another like triangular course. You come out of that harbor, and you hit the swells of Lake Erie, and Lake Erie gets steep and close. So you got to prop for it. But there's guys that propped for the calm water that made up the time behind the break wall. So it was a rolling of the dice for that race.
Right.
And I think we won that race up there, if I'm not mistaken.
In Buffalo?
I think we may have won that race up there. I know there was some pictures up there that I've seen. That's one thing that I don't have a whole lot of back when I was racing. And even in my little boat, I didn't have a whole lot of that. And that's why I think when I came around to doing the poker runs, that, I took a liking to getting the pictures and documenting the events because of that. And that's how I got started in all that. You know, I ended up getting involved with, once I started doing the poker runs. You want a timeout for the light?
I'm going to kill that light.
All right.
I'll unplug it for you. I don't know which one it is. That's the only issue.
Okay, down to 2.
Yeah. So, fortunately, I got involved. I was, able to do the poker runs with the 13. Billy Friends being the first one to say, yeah, come run with us. And then I contacted Dave Patnott. I said, do you have a size limit? He says, no, what do you got? I said, 1350. He said, yeah, bring it down. And so I showed up for his Barnegat Bay poker run with it. And we get to the Barnegat Inlet. And here I come along with a Spectre Cat and a Hustler powerboat. And we're running along, and everybody's just staring at me, shaking their heads. And I'm trying to get on plane. We just came out of no wake zone. I'm trying to get on plane to go out the inlet. I couldn't get on plane. I ran a surface prop. So they see me turn around, and they all start laughing at me and like waving, see ya? Well, they didn't realize I was only turning around to surf a wave to get on plane. Once I got on plane, I turned around. I was the one that was waving. Funny story behind that is I ran into the owner of that Hustler. He came over. Come over here. I got to shake your hand. He said, I can't believe you were at that inlet in that boat. He says, we never got out. I'm like, what? He says, yeah, the catamaran took a wave over the bow, the engine stalled or something. They turned around, and the two of them weren't going to leave them. So the Hustler didn't go out, and the Spectre didn't go out. I went out to 13 and made my way up because that was the event that we would go out Barnegat, come in Manasquan, and then come through the canal and come back down and meet up at the water's edge at the end of the day. So that's where I made my mark with that. And then from there, I just started point and shoot camera, taking pictures of the event and things that we were doing. And, and thank God that one day, Dave Patnott asked me if I wanted to be the club photographer. So thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. And, got me in the helicopter. And that's why the one year that I showed up with my checkmate, I did buy a checkmate with twin Mercury outboard offshores on it. And it was my first poker run to Atlantic City with my wife. It was her first poker run. And that's the year that Tom Newby from Powerboat Magazine was shooting. And the ironic thing was, here he is flying 20 feet off our deck. And I look up there like this, and I look over her and say, how cool is that? What a job that would be. And little did I know that, you know, I would be doing that down the road. So that's why I hold this particular picture near and dear to me. That was a shot from Tom Newby, the two of us at the poker run. And so unfortunately, Tom had passed in 2007. And the craziest thing is I'm being asked to shoot the poker run. And that's when Dave's like, you ever been in a helicopter? I was like, no. See you tomorrow.
It's funny how sometimes those things just...
And I could tell you, I walked out on the tarmac, you know, thinking like, I got to fill your shoes,
right?
You know, because this was going to be for the magazine. And it was just such a crazy thing on how everything happened. And I got to say, he was on my shoulder in that chopper that whole time, because there was a shot I did not miss.
Right.
I could not miss. There was, I was just like, I came away with pictures from that event that I would have never thought I would have gotten in a million years.
Right.
And it was just, but yeah, it was a lot of pressure, especially getting into the chopper that first time. For some reason, the chopper comes off the ground and then stopped and was hovering for like 3 feet off the ground. Immediately, I thought I was going to get sick. And I couldn't think of anything else to do but put my head to the camera and look through the lens, and gone like that.
Right.
I took away the peripheral vision. It was gone.
It is a weird feeling. And going back probably 10, 15 years ago, I used to fly pretty frequently. Back when John Hagen was around with AMH, I'm sorry, not AMH, AMF. He would put up a chopper to follow the Viper when he was running with my old man, and I'd jump in with my mom from time to time, and you're 100% right. It's such an eerie feeling once you leave the ground.
Yeah. But for whatever reason, it wasn't like we lifted and went. He lifted and then started to do this and hover. But the strangest thing is, after I did that with the camera, every flight after that, it's never happened again.
Right.
Don't know why.
It's just one of those things.
It just went through my head for a split second. It happened and just never happened again.
Right.
You know, so, which is a good thing, because I've flown a lot more since then. Yeah. And covered a lot of events for the NJPPC, and Stu Jones I shot at one year down there for his Key West run. I shot for a lot of promoters. Buffalo Poker Run, the Erie Poker Run with the Elite, new ones up in Lake Champlain last year. And it's been a crazy year with the COVID. You know, I went from last year, the only event I had on my schedule was the Thousand Islands, and then sure enough, that, you know, once they closed the border, that was closed. Right. And I was down to shooting nothing. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to get a lot of work done by boats this year. And the next thing I know, other photographers weren't shooting certain events, and I started getting the calls, and I end up with a full summer again shooting events all over the place. So I kind of lucked out in that aspect, and but I got a lot of support behind me, especially Chef Mike from ABG, huge supporter. Hurricane, Joe Hurricane. Who
also, not to cut you off, but Chef Mike has his own podcast now, right?
Yes.
Do you know what it's called by any chance?
$1 Million Food Guys.
That's awesome. Check out $1 Million Food Guys, man. Chef Mike's a local here in the Jersey area, and he takes care of everybody. Take care of him. Yep. But I didn't want to get too far away from your experience with the initial process of the bullet. Mm-hmm. So I really was curious, where did that come from? Like most of these outboard boats, or, the typical ones, you're 22 or 21, right. But these are kind of not your typical boat. Where did this come from?
This was Tommy's design. Quite honestly, it was 6th Avenue, Seaside Park. Did it in his garage. Built the plug and, built a mold off of it. And the thing I ran it to its potential. And, we've had all sorts of crazy power on them. I've only known, I know only one for a fact that I know that went over, but and I literally called it when it was happening. would jump around in the surf quite a bit. And this one guy was in the surf, and I'm on the beach, and he came in too far, and his engine hit bottom, and he hit trim. Started trimming up, and I'm like, oh my God, he's going to flip the boat. So he got the boat turned around and got it into the wave, but the motor's up, and as soon as he hit the gas, as the wave hit him, he stood it straight up on the transom, and it rolled backwards. Real slow. Didn't get hurt or nothing. People on the beach looking at me, he's like, how'd you know that was going to happen? I said, I saw everything, all the pieces coming together, what he was doing, that it was going to happen.
Right.
And,
well, there was one down in my neck of the woods in Little Lake Harbor down there. And so when I was a kid, it was burned into my mind, because when you see something and you know where it came from, you know.
Yep.
So it's just kind of cool. Over the years, I've had the good fortune of talking to a lot of people who've either been in them or owned one.
Yeah.
And I've never heard a negative comment.
Yeah, they, you know, they just run so well.
On minimal horsepower.
Yeah, yeah.
So what was
your probably 30 with a 25?
So what was your typical package like back then when you'd buy one? What came on it?
To this day, because of the way the formula is with the Coast Guard, they were rated for 25s. And that was like length times width divided by 9 or something, and whatever that number is, look at the scale, and that's what you have.
Right.
So it's downside. Why some people wouldn't buy it. Oh, well, I can go get this, and it's got this horsepower rating. I want to put more power on it. I'm like, there's nothing we can do about that. You know, the rating is the rating. That's where we're at. You know, unless we widened it. You know, but who knows what it would run like if you're going to widen it.
Right.
So people ran the bigger power on them anyway. You know, you're not going to tell somebody that they can't. You know, anytime somebody was asking me, you know, how much they could put on it, I said 25, like it says. Right.
I've seen people with 115s, 150s, crazy stuff bolted to them.
Tommy ended up buying one of my race boats. So when I was getting out of that, and that was my 208 boat, I believe it was, where you couldn't walk on that deck. That deck came out of the mold at 35 pounds.
Right.
It was a race boat. It still took a licking. It got beaten up pretty good, and but it stayed together. And so I said to Tommy, what are you going to do with this? He said, put a V4 on it. Okay. I said, you going to add some reinforcement? He says, yeah, I'm going to core this, I'm going to do that, this, that, and the other thing. I was like, Tommy, I really hate to see you do that, but do what you want. It's yours now, you know?
Right.
So that boat ran close to 70 when I had it. And as soon as he went to put that 115 on it, I'm like, how you making out? He says, she ain't going that quick. He couldn't find a prop for it. You got a V4 that is on something so light, you really got to spin a big wheel. And I don't think he was able to ever find the right wheel for it to get where he wanted to be. I'm like, if you stuck with the little 3-cylinder, you know, you'd be at speed.
And what were they really making to get to 70? Where they say they're 25s, but was it 35, 40? What was the magic horsepower?
To get to the high 60s was, I was running that with my Stinger, my 75 Stinger, short shaft. But they were the short shafts. They were lighter motors.
Right. So that was 75 horse, probably a 90-pound motor?
No, the motors I think were 198.
198.
I'm gonna guess.
So it's just crazy when you start to do like the balance mathematics of a 13-foot boat with 70 horse, and then you say things like 66 miles an hour. Like that seems to be like 66, 69 in that area was.
If you can get them set up just right. And now with today's technology and the propellers, who knows, you know, what mine's going to end up doing. I don't know.
It's a crazy thing to fathom. Like you could take a 21 Checkmate, because you mentioned Checkmate. You could put a 225 on that and a good Optimax, you know, not a race package, but damn near it. And they run 65, 66, and that does it on nothing. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah, it really doesn't, and it depends because they're all different. Over the years, they're all different in weight. So you really don't know what they're going to end up weighing. In the end, I'm dying to find out what mine weighs now that I'm restoring this 1985 and, gutted it It's just going to be a streamline, nothing but single seat, single center steering, and go fast boat. And I just sold the deck off of that after we got the mold done. We widened the cockpit on that to make it more, user friendly for 2 adults versus a person and a half. Right. So if you were looking for any complaint out of the boat, it was the fact that the cockpit was too narrow.
Right. But anybody buying one of those, I mean, you have to know it's not a family. Like, you're not putting 4 people in it.
Funny you say that.
You could.
We did.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, but if you're going to complain,
I'm going to go back now. I don't live
but
here.
If you're lodging a complaint based upon you bought a 13-foot boat and it's not big enough for you, I mean, come on. What are we talking about?
Right. But that was what was impressive is we had to get across the bay. So it was Tommy, my sister, me, and one of Tommy's friends. It was 4 of us. And we only had a 30 on it. But it was pitched low enough that you put somebody up on the bow. Once you got it on plane, the 4 of us are ripping across the bay. Right. So it was good times.
That's awesome.
Good times with it, Well,
and what's cool is, and we were kind of alluded to it as we were talking about some of the boats you were in over the years, but the old school racers and race boats, the stigma you get is those guys really went out and ran against the elements.
Yeah.
And what I think is particularly cool is that's exactly what that's all about.
Oh, yeah.
Is, it's not a boat. You never ever promote that to me as a river boat or a lake boat. Like you never put it to me that way. You put it to me as this is a 13-foot boat that'll run almost 70 mile an hour on no horsepower, and you can run through anything with it.
Yeah. They really do handle the rough water very well, just in its shape. I know some people's, back in the day, some people's big complaint, I don't like how that nose dives down like that. But if you look at some of my pictures that have been taken, the one right over here on Kettle Creek, I was ripping down, and Kevin Sornicki had gotten a great shot of my boat, and it was all aired out, running on the last 6 to 8 inches of the pad. And guess what? That little dip on that bow is dead level.
Right.
Because what Tommy designed that off of was an airplane wing. And the whole shape of that deck is of an airplane wing. So when you look at it, it goes and just drops.
Right.
Teardrops towards the back. And if you start to look at a lot of the designs that are out there now, look at some of these big catamarans, offshore catamarans. What are they all doing?
Well, look at Sean Torrentes. Right? That's the new one, right? That's the one everybody's talking about. Well, if you look at that, Doug Wright, look at where the canopy's placed. Look at everything about that boat looks like what they did was just move everything back, right? But they didn't. They maintained a shape. Right. That boat's a straight up airplane wing. It's all aerodynamics. And that is one thing that's coming into the sport now, where you're starting to get a lot more of that technology, your hydrodynamics, your aerodynamics at a very high level and informative, the technology that we have available to us now between wind tunnels and CAD programs. And
I'll give you a prime example, not to get away from the offshore racing boats or anything, but huge sponsor of mine for years, Joe out at Sensation Powerboats. I had a nice conversation with him about his center consoles. And
take a look at that hardtop.
Putting the hardtop on there.
Yep.
And when he first got involved putting the hardtop on, and he's like, I had no idea how much of effect. Exactly, right
Page
there.
1 of Speedboat Magazine. If you haven't got your issue, pick it up. And you'll see exactly what Tim's talking about.
He was telling me, they went, he says, the thing ran great in a straight line. As soon as we went to turn, the wind effect on that. So, they went out there, balls of yarn, kept putting on it, did their own wind test on it. And that's why you came up with something like that.
Yep. Funny story. Something I probably shouldn't give up as a. Oh, okay. Sorry, hon. It was a GoPro. Something I shouldn't give up as a kind of a secret, but it's not a secret at this point. A lot of people know what we did. But my brother and Aaron, when they were running AMH, came up to Fall River, and it was a bad weekend. It was rainy, it was wet, it was kind of chilly, you know, so they were looking for something to do. They found a helicopter charter that would leave out of Fall River and go down to Boston, right? So they get in a helicopter and they're taking off, they're going down to Boston. My brother's sitting there and he's looking, and the pilot's staring down, looking at this string off the front of
string on the glass.
Yep. And so he's like, what the hell is that, man? You know, so the guy goes through the whole spiel. It's how I know where I'm going, how I'm tracking, what's going on, right? And at the time, Aaron was having trouble getting that Supercat to run true. Couldn't quite figure out how to not put input in the wheel, let it straighten itself out, get all the RPM, et cetera, et cetera. So no bullshit. They took the boat home from that race and put a string right in front of the canopy and straightened them out. All their problems were solved. Yeah. That's a real, like, people say that and they think it's like this, you know, kind of like a joke, but it's not.
No, it's not.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what Joe told me. He said when he went out to test, and that's how they came up with the design, because he was all about the hydrodynamics. He says, and that's what he told me. He said, this is a whole new thing for me to think about the aerodynamics. Right. You know, working with the hydrodynamics. And it was an interesting story from Joe about, you know, how that came about, because I was just so curious, like, how did you develop, you know, come up with this? Because there's such a unique design on that. And then you look at some of the other ones that, you know, did they put any thought into this one? You know, and what kind of handling issues are they having? Because some of them are like sails.
And you know what's crazy is I don't think anybody thought that the center console market was going to become the powerboat market. Right. Where you have 50-foot center consoles running 91 miles an hour now on outboards. Yeah. Like, who would have, if I would have rewound time 5 years and said, Tim, do you think this is possible? Yeah. No way. Yeah. The stuff they're doing now is just out of control.
Yeah. And, you know, the warranties they're getting on the engines and things like that is a big seller. Their engines are staying together. And, you know, I was always an outboard fan, but I still love the noise of the inboards, but always an outboard fan. And you have those people out there that wouldn't trade that noise for an outboard, but now you're starting to find it. They are. They're buying these twin-engine cats.
And not just that, the reliability. Yeah. That was, outboards always had good performance. Anybody who says they did, I'm an inboard guy. Yeah. I'm the guy you just talked about that I won't give in. I'll never own an outboard. Right. But I will admit that the biggest issue with them was never the horsepower or displacement or anything like that. There's been plenty of fast boats throughout the course of history that were outboard boats. I mean, you can't argue that. But the reliability. Outboards were hand grenades my whole life. When I was, up until I was about 10, 15 years old, they started to make the change. Those, the Optimax series really got figured out through Mercury. The 300 XS became a 1,000-hour motor. You know, not in the race application, obviously, but so now you fast forward to 2021 with these V8 4-strokes coming out and Mercury's Verado, which is...
But this is 12.
Yeah, that's a little crazy. That's a little crazy. But,
I mean, that came out of nowhere.
But they don't break. You know, they have, you know, some lower unit issues they're trying to figure out. And that just comes with adopting way more horsepower into those midsection and lower units now. You know, that, and which is natural. They're going to figure that out. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, outboards have come a long way.
Yep. Yeah.
And they're taking over the sport, which is kind of cool. I'm actually digging seeing the transition of power. Yeah. Like, I have more people asking me about Superstock than Supercat, and that's never been the case. Wow. You know, people are they're almost over it. You know, when you watch some of these big boats run and they make it 2-3 laps into a race and there's 3 of them left, right? They're tired of it. Yeah. Whereas Superstock, they head out with 12, 13 boats and they head out with 12, 13 boats and, you know, it's tight racing all the way through. Yeah. You know, it's really starting to take over. Class 7, that's got to be near and dear to your heart. Yeah, yeah. You know, and so speaking of Class 7, from what I understand, you and Britt Lilly have teamed up to put Bullet back into production, right?
Yeah, they. I bought the hold mold back after a long search, high water, trying to find the mold that was taken off of my last boat. I had brought my boat to North Carolina and gave permission to a company down there to make a mold off of it, and then he had since sold it and could never find it. And I come across a couple pictures online, and I'm finding names on side of boats that you couldn't find as a manufacturer. But something keyed me in at some point that I finally was able to put two and two together, that they were in the backwoods behind a guy's house in New Hampshire. So last fall, I made the contact. Even I was trying him for, God, I had that number, and I would try every now and then, would never get an answer. And one day he finally picked up and started talking to me. I said, yeah, you have the old mold. And so we talked for probably a good hour on the phone, and basically telling him everything about it. I'm not even sure how much he was listening, because he's like, oh, you're Sharkey. You're the real deal.
Right.
Like when I got there, he had no idea. Like, yeah, this is my whole history and this and that. I said, this is what we were talking about. I don't think he put two and two together. So, yeah, it worked out a deal, and, brought the whole mold home. And it just happened to be on the eve of the same weekend that we were doing that Bullet 130 shootout, which was just a quirk of an idea, like how many can we get together to do a photo shoot? And lo and behold, 10 boats came out of the woodwork, 9 of them running, 1 with no engine. And it was just so impressive to see all those, and they're all different horsepower.
And there's a great picture of you standing there on the beach with all of them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was just something else. And of all places, we did it right up the street from where that boat was designed and built, from Seaside Park.
Right.
So I think we like to try and do something annually in the fall with that. Guys want to do something sooner, but, if we do something sooner, in the next, they say this May or June, we're going to open up to all the mini boats. We're going to open it up to the mini cats, because there's a lot of fun cats out there, scat cats. There's other mini boats out there, and just make it kind of a mini group and get together. Because there's just such a demand for these things right now. And the funny thing is, like, I posted the videos I have from running the boat in Key West. This day, of all things, we're wave jumping in Long Branch Pier, which is no longer there. So that, to me, is a near and dear photograph that was taken by Bill Buff, and he was out in his Bullet at the time, with, which is a one-off 19 that Tommy had built. That thing was a rocket ship. So there was an extra model there that really didn't get marketed, but he built a custom 19-footer that went out with a stock 200, and no test time, just threw a prop on it, 200. Boat ran 86 miles an hour.
Wow.
It was a rocket ship. But you had to be careful, because it ran like a tunnel boat. It ran, because of those reverse chines, the boat was so light that you turned that thing too hard and you lost the compression out of one side. She'd want to roll on you.
Right.
And but from what I understand, I tried finding that, and someone online had said that it's out in Lake of the Ozarks or out in Missouri somewhere.
So now, with you and Britt kind of doing this deal together, are you guys venturing over the 130, or are you focusing on the 130?
Well, I more or less handed him the mold to work out of. And when I went to do the deck, he says, was there any changes you would think you'd want to make? And I already made the one change, and that was to eliminate the splash well. Now today, everybody's putting brackets on them anyway. So I said, you know what? I said, I eliminated the splash well. We already got the flat deck on the back. So the thing in my mind is, let's make the mold that way, and then just make an insert for anybody that needs a well. You put the insert in with clay, and then you got your well. Right. Secondly was widening the cockpit, and he did a phenomenal job. He put his 2 biggest friends in. He told me he's 2 biggest guys in the boat, and he came up with, I think, 5 inches wider than what the original cockpit is. But I had only favor I asked him. I said, if you could do it without changing the lines, unbelievable. That does not change the look of the boat whatsoever.
Good.
And if anything, it just made it look even better, because now the sides of the deck are the same width as the upper portion of the raised portion. So and then he kind of tapered it in. And it did a beautiful job on it. And I just saw the pictures come out yesterday with the article. He put the deck on it, and he's got his baby girl on there. And, great shot of her. But just as impressive is how much the reflection of her is in that deck. And like, look at the shine on that thing.
Yeah.
He did a beautiful job on that.
It's going to be really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
well, you're with the right guy there.
Funny thing is, another great supporter of mine, Jason from Brand X, Jason Ventura, used to work up in the Outer Limits and went on his own. Huge supporter of mine. And when he, heard about this thing, he says, "Hey, if you everybody need somebody to build those boats for you in Florida, give me a ring." And I was like, I had no idea. He says, "There's a lot of things we do down here that people just don't know about."
Right.
It's like, that's great. Good to know.
That is cool.
So, I had him reaching out. And then when I called Britt, I mean, it was just like, it's like, "Hey, you have any interest in building these things?" He's like, "Hell yeah." I'm like, "All right, then I'll bring the mold down." So, probably within that next week, I was bringing the mold down to him, and then made another trip and brought my boat down for him to, modify the deck and make a mold off of that. So, and I just, as I've been telling everyone, I said, you know what, Britt has so much on his plate. He's trying to race 3 boats this year, trying to finish his 29, and everybody's like, "How much? How much? When are we going to be done? When are they going to be done?" I said, you know what, when they're done, they're done.
Right.
When he has time, because he's doing it as he has time, and I'm surprised that he was able to get this much done. Quite honestly, he's just got so much going on in that shop.
Yeah,
the amount of work this kid turns out is just unbelievable, and I think he's going to do really well. He says the phone's ringing off the hook for the things,
right,
which is a good sign.
Well, before we took a break there, we were talking about Britt and your bullet project there. And so I guess a question I've been getting a lot ever since those articles have been coming out, which if you're listening to this, you can go to Speed on the Water Friends, I believe it is, on Facebook and look up the latest news coming out of Lily's shop there with Tim's project with Bullet. But what I'm getting from people is, are you going to build bigger models?
Well, he's got his 29.
Right.
So his 29 race boat that he's finishing up is going to, be down in Cocoa at the first race. He's getting ready to paint that now.
Oh, I mean, are you going to build bigger models of the Bullet?
Not that I've ever,
Right. See, when you put up the 22 center console, because I shared that, and a few of my buddies from the Mullica River area. You ever do any running down there?
Yeah.
So a few of my buddies from there were like, "Man, that thing's cool. I just wish it was 7 feet longer." Yeah. And so when they saw the center console, they're like, "Can we put a flat deck on it?"
Well, that's what I'm doing right now. Well, I'm putting actually, my other project is, both my boats are 85s. That were built back when I was with the company. So the one center console was a 20-foot center console with the liner in it, and I at that time built it for my brother. My brother at one point handed it off to my dad. So my dad got too old for it. He says, "It's about time you take the boat over." So I took it over. Well, I'm not much of a center console kind of guy, and I just happened to decide to take the liner out and wanted to make a closed deck out of it. And fortunately, a 22 Bullet popped up on Craigslist, I believe it was. And it said, $600 if you want it with the trailer, or free, come get the boat. And I'm like trying to get the hold of this guy. Well, it turns out my cousin's son ended up getting it. And so lo and behold, I find out from my other relative, Stan, he says, "Hey, Kyle got that 22. It's over behind, the house in Point." I was like, "No kidding. I've got to stop by and take a look at it." So now I'm trying to reach my cousin. What's your son going to do with that deck? I hear he's going to turn it into a center console. Well, he's going to actually turn it into a flats boat because he lives down in Florida. He wants to turn it into a flats boat. So right away, I'm like getting a hold of him. I'm like, "What are you doing with the deck?" He says, "Hey, you want it? Go get it." I didn't waste no time. Went over there, brought it home. Within 2 nights, that deck was off. And thanks to you and your dad, and you guys had put the forklift under it, moved it from one boat to the other. That boat was back in its driveway 2 days later.
That's cool.
So I modified that to fit my 20, and initially was going to extend the hull. And I was just like, you know what? let me just make it a 20, save some time. And so I cut the deck down, fit that, put a new transom in it, and now I just got to do the inside and, relaminate it up the way I would want it, because I know how I run boats. And
right.
It's got to be built, a lot stronger than what it came out of the factory as. So that's where I'm at with those two projects. I mean, I'm right there. Hopefully one of them's going to get finished this year.
Now, do you have a mold for the 20?
No.
So that'll be a one-off.
It's something else I searched, and I went into, the internet is your friend.
Yeah.
I went and we sold the molds off to a company called Anna Capri, and that was back so long ago in the 80s, right? So I'm like, what are the chances? So I do a Google search for Anna Capri. I go into the Coast Guard hull identification number search, and sure enough, there it says Anna Capri. Well, I called that number, and they still answered.
No shit.
Yep. The guy knew exactly what I was talking about. And I said, 22 boat, closed deck. He says, yeah, see, yeah. And I was like, yeah, where are the molds? He says, destroyed.
Oh, no.
I was like, did I hear that right? Yeah, destroyed. I'm like, oh, all right then. Now, maybe he was telling me the truth. Maybe he didn't want to answer, but he's like, no, destroyed. So maybe hurricane came through, maybe, Hurricane Andrew or something. He says, no, destroyed. I was like, I understand. Have a great day. So
right.
As far as I know, they're gone.
But at least you still have the hull.
I got the hull. I got the deck.
The possibilities are still there.
I don't want to be really getting into building boats. I just
think they're too cool, man.
This thing was always near and dear to me. That was my childhood in a sense. It's a place I got my start. And I was just hoping to find somebody that, for one, that was going to do them justice and build them right. And I could have gotten anybody that would build them, chopper gun and this and that. You don't want boats out there falling apart,
right?
So I made that call, and he said, "Yeah, I would love to be part of that and do that together." Go right ahead, It's all yours.
Britt brings with him a level of attention to detail that you don't find commonly. And where you really see that is
that's why it made the perfect match.
Absolutely. And when you look at his 29 from the original one to the new one, that's evident, right? But where it was really evident to me was with the 42, with the Fountain. Now, because I watched that race as Oliver's Firewater, I watched that race as Stanch's Cintron, and now to see it out, as the Hurricane of Awesomeness.
Yeah.
When you walk up to that boat, you would think it was built yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gorgeous.
Like I said, I don't know where he's pulling the time out of the sky for all the work that he puts out. It's just amazing. But I told him, I said, listen, no pressure. You have time, you get to it. But I think when that phone starts ringing off the hook, then he's like, what? I got to put a little more time into this.
Yeah, man.
So he's got the first one up, and it's nice. He asked me, he reached out and he says, do you want hull number one? I said, for the amount of time and heart and blood, sweat I put into this rebuild on the restoration, I said, I got to at least finish this one and see if I'm going to be happy with, my goal is to get 70 out of it.
Right.
I'm happy.
I think just in
comfortable.
I think just in prop technology now, you'll be there.
Yeah. I just, I do. And the balance of the boat is going to play a huge part. That particular hull, I'm dying to know what it weighs.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask. So
I don't know I have no clue. I know I can pick it up with no problem, the hull itself. But I want to weigh that to kind of give me a number of where I want to be when I go to build the new deck.
Right.
I don't want to build another 35-pound deck unless it's going to be stiff enough.
Well, and that's kind of what I was going to say with today's composites and what the numbers were. I got to think you're going to improve And you still keep, with today's composites, you still keep the structure.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you're building a paperweight.
Yeah.
It'll be light, but it'll still be strong.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It depends on how much I can afford. You know, if I want to go carbon, then we could do carbon.
Right.
And then the boat could be well into a 35-pound deck and still have the stiffness.
Right.
But back then, I was all vinyl ester, 1208. Let's go racing.
Yeah. And it's funny, like you said, it depends on how far you want to go. Today with composites, it's endless.
Yeah. And I was going to composite this boat. I took so much weight out of it. But then I was going to do composite. I was going to build it like my old other boats with the balsa core and 1708 with vinyl ester resin. And then I'm just thinking, for the amount of glass that's still in there from what was originally built, plus the glass I laid onto it, I'm like, I'm going to keep it straight glass and leave it as is. For what I put in there for stringers, hollow fiberglass stringers, which is something I've never done in the boats. And that I took off of, pretty much when I saw Britt had the hollow stringers in his Super V, the Super V light boat. I was like, I'm going to give that a shot,
Right.
So there's no wood there as far as that's concerned. My transom's not going anywhere. As much as people beat me up for using balsa in the transom, the big cats used to even run balsa in their transoms. It all depends on how you lay them up.
Yeah.
And, my race boat held up for forever, which now just got sold time and time again. And that boat, I actually had a 3 or 4 inch hole in it for the transom, through the transom for the trim on that motor. And because those motors don't have trim.
Right.
Those short shafts, they didn't have the trim. So you had to make up your own trim system. So my ram ran right in and out of the transom.
Right.
And the setup on that boat, the motor flat on the transom, because for one, the APBA class I ran, E-production, you could not mess with the gear case. So you couldn't, the only thing you were allowed to do was plug the top 2 holes in the water pickup.
Right.
So that was as high as I can run anyway, just 21 inches or so. And I still had plenty of water. And the boat ran fantastic.
Right.
Lower center of gravity. So I know the difference between what I ran with that boat and then my last boat that I had built was with an SST60 powerhead, SST60 gear case. But Scott Barnacle of New Jersey Outboards at the time had modified it to a 20-inch midsection, so that I had power trim. We didn't have to go, because that was only going to be my pleasure boat. So we really didn't worry about it. But I could feel the difference in the handling, having that motor another 5 inches taller.
Right.
So this time around, I picked up an SST60 complete engine, short shaft and all, and still have to figure out how I'm going to set that one up, whether I'm going to put it on a jack plate, whether I'm not going to put it. It's already 15 inches. Where am I going with a jack plate?
Right.
I may not need it. If I don't need it, direct cable steering was in was in my race boat, and direct cable. Scotty told me, he says, "You're nuts. You don't want to go direct cable." I was like, "Why is that?" He says, "Well, you turn that wheel quarter turn, and that motor's completely sideways."
Right.
I'm like, sounds just like what I'm looking for. And sure enough, once that bottom gets to a certain speed, she's going to want a chine walk. Well, instead of having to do a whole half a turn to work out the chine walk, I only had to turn an inch and a half back and forth this way, and they kept it straight as an arrow.
Right.
Now, people are trying to convince me to go with hydraulic. I know what the old hydraulic systems were like, but some people are telling me, no, you can get them in this ratio and that ratio, and if it can feel as effortless as that cable is, then I'll go hydraulic.
Right.
But I really love the cable steering, but it's hard to come by trying to get the parts, trying to get the helm. You may end up having to get it custom built.
You can achieve the same thing through a hydraulic system, but it's more moving parts. The system you're talking about, where you're just running a cable in. It's
I didn't
so
even
simple.
have pulleys on the back of the boat. The cables came off the helm, went through one set of pulleys right to wing plates.
Right.
Not through another pulley back to the boat.
Right.
And That was the best handling boat I ever had. Sitting in the pad, seats all the way down. You're just looking over the dashboard, and less wind resistance. But and then I made that fairing for the back of it, and that picked up because of closing that cockpit in, and you're finishing off the wing. It gave you more aerodynamics. So I probably picked up a mile an hour with that, just closing that off.
So when you were running that with APBA, who were some of your competitors there?
Well, most of the stuff I was doing was local. Billy Butterfield, Indigo Offshore Racing Team, with his Funcat. He was the guy to beat.
Right.
He was definitely the guy to beat. And so we were running I was pretty much one of the few Vs that were out there. A lot of other guys were running the Funcats. A lot of problems with the Funcats was they couldn't turn.
Well, and for those people that are listening that don't know what a Funcat is.
13-foot. Larry Wurzburger had built it out of Point Pleasant, out of Arnold Yacht Basin. It was a scaled-down version of the Shadow Cat.
Right.
And and Billy even told me that it had the same characteristics as the big boat. So Billy, he was really off the wall when it came to power. He had, I believe, a 140 at one time on that boat. And that's when he told me. He says, yeah, once that boat got around 80 miles an hour, that tunnel started working and ran great. I'm like, yeah, just like the big boat.
Right.
You had that hop. Once you get over that hop at 80 miles an hour, that boat ran.
Right.
So, with the big boat, took triple engines to do that.
Right.
Unless you had the inboards. But, yeah, we always had that hop that we had to get out of it to go. But, yeah, he got that thing up to some amazing speeds, and I think he eventually sold it. I think he told me he'd even put a canopy on it at one point, for the size of the power and everything he was running with it. He probably felt it was a good idea to do that.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
But yeah, there were some good times with Billy and Larry and another guy out of Long Island. He was racing an Allison with a Tohatsu, so he had a nice lightweight engine. Sound like it was really worked up, and I got to say he always beat me on the beach more than he did out on the course.
Right.
He always talked a good game. I would go home because I had everybody telling me, oh, he's going to go do this, he's going to go do that, and I would fall for it, and then I would go home, start raising my motor, put bigger props on.
Right.
I mean, at one point, my motor is on this boat. It was, I think, 31 inches with a 14.5, 28 cleaver, chopper cleaver on the back. There's a picture of us racing in the Delaware River. I'm throwing a rooster tail like 100 feet long. Didn't go any faster. It slowed down. I still beat them, but, or it's either he didn't show up or something. I don't remember him being at that race, but yeah, he talked me into doing a lot of stupid things.
What's cool, though, and the reason why I asked was I was hoping you'd bring up the Allison. And it's just funny to me how people will look at what you guys accomplished there, and you call it mini boats, right? Yeah. How that's such a precursor to what Offshore became.
Right.
Where, everybody knows what the Allison turned into. And,
I mean, it's one of the fastest, if not the fastest V-bottom out there, in that size.
Yeah. Well, and if it wasn't for that boat, there is no fountain power boats.
Yeah.
And so it's funny. People don't give enough, a credit, credit where credit's due to the work that you guys put in, and, where you say a mini boat, or it's so important to the evolution of where we are today.
Yeah. Yeah. The Allison is, here's a story, another one happening on the Matitaconk. I had bought a boat. That's when I was my next boat up from the 13. I went to a 19-foot laser. And guy Harry that used to work at Professional Marine, I bought the boat off of Harry, and it was a wreck. And I'm like, Harry, what happened to this thing? He says, somebody drove it into the jetty. And but if you want to take it, I was like, yeah, I'll buy it off your hands. I'll put the time into it. Totally rebuilt that boat. And it was probably a little heavier. I know it was a lot heavier than what it was, but it was a lot stronger than what it ever was. People couldn't believe I would take the thing out in the ocean. But I got my clocks cleaned out here up against an Allison that had 4 people in it. 4 people, and this boat walked away from me. I'm running 90, 91 miles an hour, and this boat walked away from me. I'm like, man, that thing's impressive.
Yeah, they're fast.
And it was a gorgeous piece.
There was a few of them that were lightning fast. The sleek crafts back in the day,
But the one thing you'll never do with them, you'll never get them out in the ocean.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And that's why I've always thought what you've done was so cool.
Well, that laser, my wife was at the time, girlfriend. We were down in Barnegat Light where we had the sandbar. So one day we were all sitting there. I had her down there with us, and the wind turned out of the south. So I just looked at her, and everybody, was getting ready to leave for the day. I said, "Guess what, honey?" I says, "We got to go home by way of the ocean." And she goes, "Why? Why can't we take the bay?" I said, "You don't want to go down the bay this time of day." I said, "It's going to be a huge washing machine." I said, "There's no way I'm going back in the bay." So she goes, "Well, how we get home?" I said, "The ocean."
Right.
So once I got her past Barnegat Inlet and we got outside, it was some nice, beautiful rollers. They were probably 4-footer drop-offs, maybe 5-foot drop-offs. And I just told her, I said, just do yourself a favor. Don't look over the edge. All right. So she's just like white-knuckled, holding on. And the sweet spot I found for that boat in that water was 60 miles an hour.
Right.
We're launching off the back of them and landing down on the pad nice and smooth the whole way. And then finally one time she looked over and she started screaming. She goes, I'm like, "What's wrong?" She goes, "I can't see the water." It's like, I told you not to look over. But that was a beautiful ride back.
It's funny. For those of us that live here and boat in the Barnegat a bunch, we know 4:30, 5 o'clock, you're there too late. Yeah. It's going to swing, and that bay gets nasty,
Yeah.
And I've had friends either from the racing organization or whatever that aren't from the area come down and boat with me, and they're like, "What happened, man? It was a lily pond this morning."
Yeah.
Every day it swings.
Yeah. And the same thing with our shootout that day. I told everybody, I said, "You got to be prompt. We got to get out there first thing in the morning and get the photos done." I said, because once we go to lunch, all bets are off. It's going to get big. Well, there was good 2-footers coming across there when we were on lunch. And what was interesting about that is to see how each boat handled, the water, because some had bigger power, some had lighter power. Some boats were heavier than some of the other boats. And I sit there and analyze just how each boat ran and how these guys were running them. And, it was really a cool thing to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Just wish I was in a helicopter doing it because I'm trying to shoot off a center console and get beat to death. But, so there was some good things there. And like I said, the Allison is just really, up there in design, performance. It's just...
I think it's one of the icons that don't get recognized.
No doubt.
Obviously, guys like you and you understand what that was.
Yeah.
And to be transparent, it wasn't until until we were running the fountain that I understood where the fountain came from. Mm-hmm. And then there's a great documentary, I believe it's called The King of Speed or King of Offshore, with Reggie, where they kind of deep dive into his developmental process of the fountain, and they do a good job of doing justice to the Allison. Yeah. And but that's one of the icons, man. You always see the cigarette or the Apache or the fountain or the skater, but that's the boat that really innovated the V-bottom market.
Yeah, no doubt. And then of course you got velocity,
Right. More ghosts in the room.
More ghosts in the room. I know somebody's here listening. Thing is, we got too many of them up there.
That's
and
it.
If, something I wanted to touch on is like the photography end of this whole career with the boating, when I switched over to doing a lot of the photography. And speaking of things happening all the time, but a lot of supporters of mine that I've passed, but the work I put into some of the memorials, like Joe Scrow, he supplied me a chopper all the time. He'd give me his chopper. He says, "Here, you want to go fly, shoot the event up on the Hudson." And between his collection, but probably the most important one was my dad's. Freedom is not free. I did a composite of him with the Korean War memorial and everything, and with him overlaid with the American flag. But what I did is the top half was all him and his old pictures from the war, and then the lower half of that was me and my 2 girls and my wife, and I just kind of put in, writing there, kids living in 2 different times.
Right.
What his childhood was like, being in the fighting the war, and then how, what I was doing growing up, at his age at that time. It's just like a reflection on that. But composite-wise, I don't think I put as much time into something in my life as far as a composite was for Mike Fury.
Right.
All those boats that I surrounded him in were all hand cut digitally. I had to hand cut and just pull everyone. First, I had to find them. I had to go through all my galleries, try to find all these really different models and different color schemes and things like that, and all, try to get different boats from all the different years. I mean, he built so much. There's not one that's the same, and
that was a huge loss.
It was a huge loss
when he passed.
It was a huge loss, and the thing too that was, he ran that catamaran up in the Buffalo Poker Run. And that was the first aerial shot of that boat. And I think it was probably the first and maybe the last of that boat. And, to find out that, he had passed. And then we lost Joe.
Right.
And, two guys for the same boating company and everything. It's just huge losses. Losses. Tom Healy. We mentioned Chef Mike earlier. And, I can't thank that guy enough. He gave me 3 walls of his foyer to put all my work in.
Right.
Okay. And, so it's people go in and it's not just power boats, because Mike say, hey, I'll put up there whatever you want. I really like the boats. I'm like, all right, here's what I'll do. I gave him the layout and how he said, put other stuff. I love sunsets. I like this and that. And I said, yeah, we'll get all that. And then once that was filled, hey, I need some stuff inside. Right. I was like, all right, so we put some stuff on the inside. But, and then as I sat back and looked, and I'm like, my God, if nothing else, that wall has started to become a memorial,
right.
We lost Tom Healy, lost, Anthony Sauter, David Robb. There's just a list of people that, I look back on that wall now, I'm like, good Lord, But, they'll always be remembered.
Yeah.
They were all paid an important role. Tony was such a supporter, and his infectious laugh. He was a real great guy. You know
what I think is a given with anybody in this line of work? I say line of work, but in this hobby of ours, we all kind of have the same characteristics. We're all living fast. We're all adrenaline junkies, and so naturally we're in the path of tragedy. Most days it can happen at any given time. And you mentioned Dave, and there's a multitude of people that we've lost over the years that impact me every day, but that one especially, and you're right. It's hard, especially being this heavily involved with OPA now as I am, and looking back, from 2009, my very first boat race, and I have pictures going out the inlet with Dave. Yeah. And I was there next to him in the same exact boat that day when he died. And it's tough. It is. There's one incredible story that I got to mention. I can't forget, leave him out. And Dave was a huge part of this. We had lost Scott Applegate. Yeah. And it was an ongoing thing with Scott and I, that he was going to give me a ride in his outer limits. And I always laughed it off. We don't have a seat this time. No big deal. It never bothered me. Right. But it bothered him more than it bothered me. Right. And I'll never forget, we went out to his house when we kind of knew he didn't have much time left. And so
we went out to visit him and everything. And then as we're leaving, I just happened to be the last one walking out. And everybody's ahead of me. And I kind of stopped and just turned to him. And I just had to break his chops. I said, I guess it's not looking good for that boat ride, huh? And he just starts laughing. He says, you still got time. And I got that call from Dave. He says, your request is to be on the dock tomorrow morning for the Atlantic City poker run. I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, the doctor has cleared Scott to be able to do the Atlantic City poker run. And you need to be on his boat. I'm like, wow. And if anything was the most important for me and for his kids was that I was on there to videotape him driving his last poker run.
Right.
You know? And that took everything out of him.
Yeah.
He did it, and he did it as Scott would do it. But boy, I'll never forget just watching him get out of that boat. And then, he was just so, it took everything out of him. And I was shocked to see that he showed up at the awards. He eventually showed up at the awards.
Right.
But I think they escorted him right to his room, and he, had to get some rest. But now he showed up there and the dinner and all. But
well, and that's why that term, the last ride, that's why that's so glorified. Yeah. That's something that is important. It's there's guys that come and go in the sport and pass and never really get to realize their dreams or realize. Yeah. It's very important
that's where my photography went to a different level. It was more about preserving people's memories, preserving the moments that'll just last a lifetime. And, people could look back on it any time and have, because you just don't know. The moments I captured with Mike Fury and his daughter doing the Shore Dreams.
Yeah.
And when Mike passed, and then to be able to say, hey, I have a little gift for you here, you could probably want these. And she cherishes that every day.
Right.
And, with that poster, did a fundraiser and raised some money for her. And I got the cutest card from her with her horse and stuff like that, thanking me. It's almost like she wrote in crayon, for God's sake. I held on to that to dear heart when she sent that to me. And that was a really great thing to get from her. But just to capture all these memories that people just, if you're not there,
Well, sir, you've captured thousands of mine. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, look at all the young ones I come across. And what happens is when I go back to look for something, then I stumble across, it's like, oh, look at Boomer there. Yeah, he's holding up the trophy.
It is so cool, man.
And you were so small back then. Yep. Think about that. All the years I've been shooting. And thank God for Speed on the Water, Matt Trulio, Jason Johnson. These guys picked me up as a photographer from day one. And, here's the guys, man.
Yeah, there you are there. I got them on there.
Right? They put me on the map. And it's ironic that my first image was of Talking Trash in Powerboat magazine, and it was a centerfold. And I believe that was my first picture ever in a magazine. And then Dave Patnode makes a plaque of it. Hey, you hit the big time.
Right.
And it's a shame what happened to that magazine, but in a collective effort, you got the same crew that kind of just stuck together and put this digital magazine together, and they're killing it.
Well, and Trulio really spearheads it, I think, at this point. And Trulio, a lot of people have made their opinions of him, but one thing you cannot take away from him is his work ethic.
No.
They cover everything.
I will go back to the very beginning and that's, we were discussing your laptop. Now it just reminded me there was a program I was using on my laptop, okay? And it was Desert Storm. And I had this crazy idea. Hey, Matt, you got a bad internet connection out there and everything. I get it. But people on Offshore Only, they want to know what's going on out there. Why don't you call me? So he would call me, and I would put the recording through on my laptop, and then I would upload it to my website and then start sharing it all over the place. People were getting updates live from, a phone call from
Right.
Matt. I think to this day, he kind of cringes like how he sounds on it, but hey, you know what? It's the technology we had back then.
Right.
We made it happen.
Yeah.
So that's how far back we went,
Right.
it was like right there when he was doing that, covering those events out there, even when I couldn't be there. I've yet to get out to the West Coast, but
You've never been?
no, never been.
I envy Matt. I went for the
It's
first
on my
time in
bucket
September.
list.
If I could recommend one thing to anybody, fly out to San Diego, get a rental car, and just head up the coast.
Yeah.
You cannot go wrong.
Yeah.
It is one of the most awesome places I've ever been. And
Yep.
I envy Matt. It's such a
Yeah.
cool place, man.
Yeah.
But no, you're 100% right, man. Matt and the gang, they cover just about everything in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't thank them enough.
And I think I just saw what he put up his 6,000th publication the
Over
other day or
6,000,
something. Congratulations,
6,004.
Matt.
Yeah.
That's cool.
When you think about, and it could be the quirkiest of stories. I mean, there's some things that, I'll throw it at the wall at him and, he could either say, nah, that it's no story.
Well, and
or he'll say, you know what, I can do something with that.
Well, and he's dedicated.
Yeah.
Like a couple weeks ago, we had an issue, and it actually would be good to clear up on the show. There's the St. Clair race that we do. There's two different assets there. You have
Yes. Blue Water,
the Blue Water organization
and then
that
the Fun Festival.
Yeah, they put the whole thing together. FunFest comes in and brings the vendors, the
Right.
bands, stuff like that. Well, Riverfest pulled out and
Right.
put out a publication that the race was canceled and really, in bad taste, tried to sabotage the event.
Right.
And I called Matt, and actually Matt called my old man,
Sure.
and he let us know about it. We
Yeah.
didn't even know, and so I did a little digging and figured it all out, put together a little press release, and a little light bulb went off, and went, why don't I call Matt? So figure it's probably 1 o'clock in the morning his time.
Right.
Picks the phone right up,
Sure.
writes a whole publication, has it out that night, clears it all up. Like
Yeah.
the guy's really a phenom in you
Yeah.
know that industry. I mean, they're doing a great job.
Yeah, yeah, and his, he's certainly about getting the story right too.
Yeah.
So when it comes to especially having a report of all things, when he's got a report on a death, he's just not trying to be first one to the punchline, to the headline. He's going to be the first to get it right.
Yeah.
And
there's something to that. And I think that extends all the way to the photographers as well. There should be some kind of mission statement. Like, we don't do this. We don't just rush
we have
stories
that.
out.
Okay. Matt has that, and I share that with him, that we agreed if I have pictures of an accident and the person doesn't make it, then we don't publish them.
Right.
Okay. I've got Key West shots that, I've taken down there, and now I'll leave the publication unmentioned. I had a photographer approach me, great colleague of mine, and he says, Tim, I'm being asked to go photograph this boat. What would you do? I said, listen, I'm in a different position from you, because what I would do is not shoot it, but you're hired. You're here specifically. If your boss is telling you, I said, I am not holding anything against you for doing it. You're being told to do it. It's not your choice. I know what your choice would be. If you had a right, if you chose not to, you probably wouldn't do it. He says, yeah, you're right. I said, but it's the publisher that's going to really, really, did you need to do that? Did you need to publish that? There's some things we draw that line when it comes to that.
Well, it's infuriating. Like when, and just a specific example is Keith Holmes, when he passed in St. Clair. I mean, I had it within me to wring every photographer's neck from St. Clair to Ontario, Canada.
Yeah. I sent an email off. Because to the newspaper, and really had a hard time with that one too.
Well, I
wasn't even there.
It's horrible,
I wasn't even there, and
you know
I'm
what?
Are you serious?
Everybody always places the blame on like the easiest person, right? So, like, if a photographer does something in bad taste like that, it initially affects guys like you who are the mainstay photographers of the sport.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with you guys. You guys are smart. You guys know what you're supposed to do, what's respectful and what's not.
Yeah.
It's
And
all these local, low-time
I mean,
guys.
out of respect for your organization, the OPA, I mean, there's just some things you don't put out there.
But even aside from that, my credibility pales in comparison to respecting the family and the loved ones involved.
Right.
And I admire you and guys like you who do the right thing. It's these bottom feeder photographers that work at these local news stations that have no morals.
Right.
Zero.
Yeah. And it also has a lot to do when you gain people's trust. Okay. I could tell you I have a gallery full of images of people's boats that were crashed that I approach, and the canopies were damaged, caved in, busted loose, whatever, you know, and I approached them asking them, do you mind if I can get the photography of this? Most of the time they survived, okay? And they had no problem with me doing that. But you know what I did with those photographs? Shared the link to Mike Fury. Send it off to all the, you know, to Skater. Send it off to all these other manufacturers.
For research and data.
For research and say, where did this fail? How can you improve?
Right.
That's what I use those photographs for.
Well, and because you understand it, and you've been around this for a long time, and I'm by no means talking about you or Jeff or Pete or any of these photographers of the who's who of offshore, but it's the other guys. It's and it's like, why isn't this?
They're getting their 15 minutes of fame in the paper with something, but
what did you gain?
Attach to that?
What did you gain?
Yeah,
you know, and it's like, why isn't there something in place to stop that? I understand freedom of the press, and sometimes that type of stuff is really good in negligent cases. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of wrongs that get righted from that exact thing. But why did you have to share it 5 seconds after it happened, and you have none of the facts? You don't understand what happened. Yeah. You know, it's just terrible. You know, I see that, and it turns your stomach. Yeah. But that in no means towards you. I mean, you're one of our guys, man. I trust you with my life. Yeah. But
I when it comes to that work ethic, you know, I don't share that stuff off to people. I mean, the incident with Long Island, I can't tell you how much that was a problem. Okay. I did everything I could, even not to give those photographs up there. You know, there was nothing I could do from not sharing it with the authorities, because they were ready to lock me up. They were ready to impound my equipment. They weren't going to let me leave. You know, the state.
But that's a separate deal. You know, that's the authorities.
That's one thing. But it was after the fact that was probably one of my low points in shooting photography, is having people contacting me, faking that they're family members and they want to see these images. And I'm like, and I won't forget this, you know, the one person that was trying to reach out to me, you know, telling me that they're a relative. And I said, yeah, you want to see these pictures that bad? I said, quite honestly, I don't think you want to see these pictures, but you want to see them that bad. And I'll tell you what, the race in Point Pleasant's next week. I will have Ed Smith, your dad, with me in person. You're not getting copies, but I'll let you view them. Never showed.
No, of course not.
And I did some research on that person. Turns out she worked for the Daily News.
Right. They're snakes. Yep. But that's just, you know, more reason to thank people like you and Matt and Pete and, you know, all the publications for the great job that you do.
Yeah. Well, we try to do the best we can, and to put out stuff like this, you know, it's an amazing magazine that they do.
Dude, feel this thing.
I know.
Matt sent us the box.
Even the first one was amazing.
I got to tell Matt.
But they're getting heavier and heavier.
Dude.
Every year.
I can work out with this box you sent me, buddy. Thanks, Matt. This magazine's got to be 5 pounds. It's insane,
the shipping's got to be insane.
You know what it is? They take pride in it.
Absolutely.
And it shows. I mean, it's so well put together.
It's an amazing magazine. And it's great to see you got both, you know, the speedboat as well, because Ray Lee's, you know.
Oh, they're great
Todd,
guys, man.
You know,
they're all great guys.
I worked with them up in the Thousand Islands, poker run up there, and yeah, you know, him and Todd, man, I just love Todd to death. He's fantastic. He does amazing work. Ray Lee is, you know, perfectionist with what he does with his publication. You know, and I'm proud to be on both, you know, in both those magazines. And, you know, I've shot with boating as well. You know, I did a couple of their covers. And I shared with you a picture of my office where I had put the plaques and the covers and stuff that I had. They're not all the covers I had, but, you know, from what I could fit on that wall for now.
Right.
But, you know, my wife just looks at me. She goes, "What do you need all that up there for?" I said, "Well, one day I'm not going to be here, so you'll remember I did something around here."
You know what's funny too, man? Isn't it funny how photography's changed? My mom's in the process of cleaning out the house, right? So the other day I walked in the house to have dinner, and the whole living room's filled with shit, you know, and I'm like, "What is all this?" She's like, "I'm trying to make room, you know, the closets are all jammed up." I walk up there, it's all photo albums from the film days where my mom, and I remember she used to be able to put a roll of film in her camera like I could slide a clip in a gun.
Yeah.
Like, bang, and the film's in it and right back at it. Yeah. And then you'd be at Walgreens for 3 days trying to get them all developed.
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out when I was going back in my galleries. I'm saying, you know I shot sooner than this, but then I just realized that it was, and when I opened up one of my boxes, I'm like, oh yeah, that was the film days.
Yep.
That's why this stuff's not online.
People today don't know they don't know how lucky they are with digital.
Well, that's what made me get involved once it went digital, because there's no way I was going to afford that film and all that. And it's just insane.
We would go up in a helicopter when Hagen would, you know, put the helicopter up and all, and she'd have a fanny pack that had, I don't know, 15, 20 rolls of film. Right. And people would be like, "You need all that? Like, what's that for the weekend?" I'd be like, "Dude, she goes through that in 4 or 5 hours."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I walk away from an event, probably the most I've shot was probably close to 4,000, 4,500 in one event.
Well, now with the cards, you can just...
yeah. And I just had a very difficult time for so many years, especially with NJPPC, was... I would shoot so much, but then sit there and edit for time and time on ends and put all these pictures online. And it wasn't until within the last few years that I finally like, okay, I need to pick the best 10 and call it a day. Delete the rest of them, you know, which was another piece of advice from Dave Patton. You just need to narrow it down a little bit. If you're going to save any kind of time, I'm like, yeah, you're right. And it's tough because you don't know what someone else may want.
Right.
You got to make that decision for them.
So
and you know what? If I give them less to choose from, I'm better off.
Right.
So really
you've been doing this a long time. Do you have like a most memorable shoot? I could tell you what mine is.
I'll give you one. And I did a model shoot up in the Thousand Islands. And so took the outer limits out, put them in a cove, and that was probably, I think, the first drone shot that I put the drone up for. And Empire Landscaping, one of my sponsors, was up there. And Dave and Nicole Welsler, asked me to do we were supposed to do this photo shoot out in Erie, because that's their home event with Elite and all. And I was like, Erie's great and all, and I know it's your hometown, but man, if you can make the Thousand Islands, it's beautiful up there.
Right.
So, we got up there, and MTI was nice enough to bring us out on their center console, and we got a nice, beautiful shot.
And what a center console that is.
Yeah.
Randy Chisholm and his team at MTI are changing the game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of beautiful ones. There's a lot of competition. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I happen to be a little biased. I love those boats.
It made a beautiful. It was a perfect, shooting platform for sure.
Dude, his attention to detail is world class.
Yeah,
world class. He's up there with the Ferrari and Lamborghinis of the world. His fit and finish is unbelievable. Yeah. And where really I saw it start was that 34 outboard cat. that was like, I think he put so much time into making sure that was the real deal.
Sure.
That just transcended. It transcended through everything he did.
You know, between them and the Doug Wrights, it's like, they just really.
Oh, and like I said, I mean, there's plenty of competition. But when you look at the stuff that Randy's doing, from those motorized hatches that come out of the deck with the speakers in them, and you can't find a screw. Yeah. Crawl through that boat, you can't find it.
Another, great friend is Kelly O with his MTI. Talk about sound system and speakers. Fantastic couple that owns that boat, and he makes the rounds, makes the poker runs and all. And I had the fortunate time with them to, his boat, one of his boats was named Milk Money, right? And there was a story behind that, and then I find out that they own a dairy farm.
Right.
So we're coming back from Buffalo, and I said, I'd love to see your farm. Well, next thing I know, I did a full photo shoot on that thing. And the technology he's got up there is just unbelievable. I mean, first thing I said to him, like, we're outside and you get all the manure all over the place, the manure pits and everything. It's like, Kelly, I said, I don't smell. I mean, I don't see one fly on. He says, I can't have flies on my farm. And like everything, just organic, and the facility itself. If you ever get a chance, I'll have to give you the link into my galleries to take a tour of this. And it's gone way beyond that, but the amount of cattle that he had and everything. And they raise them from babies. In fact, I brought my wife and daughter there a following year or a year after, and we went there. And just as we arrived, they were delivering a calf. So my daughter and my wife were able to see this calf.
That's cool.
And like, what are the chances of this happening, So, but yeah, to actually see the technology that's built into that, where they're all chipped, and they know how much the cows produce, and when they need a break, and they just come to a fork in the road, and I'm like, it's all automated. Okay, this one's tired. The gate opens, and that one goes that way, and the rest go the other way.
Right.
It's amazing facility that they have, but amazing couple. Always opens up their boat to me if I need a platform, and they Lake Champlain was one of them, and the Battleship run last year, I believe I was out on his boat for that one as well. And,
right.
And you don't get much better than MTI,
Right.
And, when you say high-speed photography,
that's it.
That's it. I'm shooting over 100 miles an hour on his boat, and you wonder how you get these shots sometimes, but that's the way you got to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
And
so where can people go to find your pictures? What's your website?
TimSharkey.com, SHARKEY. Also find it at Sharkey-images.com. But trying to go more for my name now and just kind of streamline it. And I know I'm over 300,000 on there. It could be over 400,000 images on there by now over the course of the years of stuff. And, but if it wasn't for a lot of these sponsors that I've had over the years, from Latham and FDR Hitches, Brand X, Cody Marine, a list full of people that I'm sure I'm about to forget somebody, but there's a lot of different people over the years that have supported me. Tirecraft from Point Pleasant, John, Master John over there, Mark Master John, came on board a few years ago. So I send him as much work as I can over there, because to get a local sponsor like that is phenomenal. And but it's just been a little, tough with not knowing where we're going with this COVID.
Right.
So, so advertising gets kind of tough to, how do you don't know what you're going to shoot. So I really haven't been pushing it too much, and just, letting their ads go for now. Because last year I was down to nothing, and, they want to see the traffic coming in for the photographs. So
right. Well, that's going to change, man. We got a big year coming up.
Yeah.
A lot of good boat races, a lot of good poker runs. I'm happy to see these fun runs coming up. I mean, a lot of people putting together, just backyard stuff. And
yeah, we have your shootout.
Yep.
Okay, so I've been called from the Tiki Lee's. The owner of Tiki Lee's, Dave, had contacted me down there, and he says, you know, I'd like to see you come down and shoot the event, because he's got a poker run on Friday, and then he's got the shootout on Saturday. I'm like, let me check the availability. I'll get back to you. And so once I knew I had the time to get down here, I said, sure, no problem. I'm there, you know, both days. So we'll be shooting that, and Matt's going to, you know, get a story done on that as well. And we'll have that in the magazine. And
that's the 10th of July.
Yes. Down
at Tiki Lee's in Baltimore, Maryland. Is it Baltimore?
It's just north. It's Sparrows
Point.
Yeah, it's just
Maryland.
north of Baltimore.
Yeah.
And right in the backyard there, not too far from Lily Sports Boats.
I was just there 2 days ago, and doing a little running around with the Phantom and checking out the race site and
nice.
Or the site of the shootout, Kilo Run. And it is just to die for. His property's amazing. That's going to be such a bang-up event.
Yeah.
He's an incredible dude. I love his vision. I love the way he's thinking about this thing. I think he's given away a 2021 Corvette for the poker run. He's guaranteed, rock solid, in stone, 10 grand for every class if you set a record. And there's a lot of records to be set. There hasn't been a Kilo in a very long time. So everybody come out to that one, man. Support. We got a guy that's hot to trot, man. Dave's ready to rock and roll. Tiki Lee's is an amazing establishment, and there's more to come.
It doesn't get much better than that place for an outdoor facility. You know, I was there for the first time last year shooting his events, and very impressive. And that's not the only thing. He owns like 4 or 5 of them places. You know, he's got a lot of them, and that's the one I was at. And I'm like, wow, you know, if you need to be outside and away from people for the COVID, I mean, you could social distance there. The tables out on the water. He had floating picnic tables. You know, they were like on their own finger docks. You step down and you sit at a picnic table. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
No, it's an incredible
facility. That's eating on the water for sure.
No, it's an incredible facility, man. Yeah. It is off the hook. I can't wait for that. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
But so Tim, we're 3 hours in, buddy.
I kept saying to myself, I would like to keep this down to 45 minutes. But there's just so much that we covered, you know. We covered an awful lot. And
you got anything left? Anything important?
I know, like I said, I forgot some sponsors. Visual Imagination was another one that I've shot a lot of his boats. Mark Morris, you know, he reached out and wanted to help me. I've been trying to get him to get to some events, but he's just painting away. You know, he can never get away. These painters are tough to get away from their work. You know, I got my notes, but I know I can't read. I can't read without my glasses. But no, I really appreciate you taking the time and everything. And the Jersey Boys, can't forget the Jersey Boys support. OPA for allowing me to come in and shoot these events. I mean, you guys can pick anybody, and you know, you can also keep people out. And
we can pick anybody, but we only pick the best, buddy.
Yeah. So you know, we do what we can to make things happen here as well. So I appreciate the availability and being able to get out there on the courses and getting the good shots. And you know, I don't know what else to say.
That's it, buddy. That's it. Don't thank me, though. Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for everyone that has supported me, you know, just to try to keep everybody all-inclusive. But you know who you are out there that really helped along the way. Thank you.
Thank you for years of service, locking up those memories for us. Head over to TimSharkeyImages.com. TimSharkey.com.
Yep.
And get yourself a cool picture, man. Just do it. Stop thinking about it.
There's more than just boats. There's all sorts of sunsets. There's
all kinds of good stuff.
All sorts of stuff in
just
there.
Just do it. Just do it. Don't even think about it anymore. Just do it. All right, Tim. Thank
you again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, brother.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah. Take care.